I can tell you the exact moment my world fell apart. 3:47 p.m., a Thursday inside Conference Room D. The room smelled like burnt coffee and cheap ambition. It was the kind of sterile space where dreams died under fluorescent lights. I stood there with a shaky smile, waiting to hear what I thought would be the biggest news of my career. Instead, I watched Amanda fresh out of her MBA, with exactly 9 months of experience accept the role I had practically built with my own blood. And, of course, my boss said, not even looking at me, Emily will support Amanda in transitioning into the new leadership role. Support. Transition. Like I was just a bridge. A temporary step. My hands didn't move, my lips curled into something polite. I stared through the applause, the clapping that sounded like gunfire in my ears. Amanda looked over her face, a cocktail of smugness and apology, and I knew. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They had never planned to promote me. I floated back to my desk, barely hearing anything. My inbox had exploded with, "Congrats, Amanda," threads. My fingers hovered over my keyboard, numb. That's when the second blow landed. A message. Just one line, sent from a number I didn't recognize. "You deserve to know. They're at the Waverly on 38th, right now." Attached was a photo grainy, taken from behind. But even with his back turned, I knew that jacket, that posture, that smug, half-tilted smile. Caleb. My boyfriend of 5 years. My almost fiancé, sitting across a candlelit table from someone I couldn't quite see until she turned her head. Amanda. I closed the email, my vision tunneled. It was like something cracked open inside me, a dam I didn't know I was holding back. All those nights working late while Caleb stayed over at the gym, the lipstick stains I convinced myself were from my own makeup bag, the gaslighting. "You're just stressed," he'd say. "You always imagine the worst. No one at work wants to steal from you, Emily. That's paranoid." No. This was real. This was betrayal, double-edged and deliberate. I didn't cry. Not at first. I walked out of the office, past the congratulatory balloons and catered cupcakes, into the humid New York afternoon. I stood on the corner of 8th and 33rd, feeling like a glitch in someone else's simulation. I didn't call him. I didn't scream. I just walked. All the way to the river. I sat on a bench overlooking the Hudson, letting the noise of traffic and seagulls drown out the chaos in my mind. I took off my heels, let my toes feel the concrete. I breathed like I hadn't in years. My phone buzzed once, twice, a dozen times. Caleb. My boss. Amanda. Even. I silenced it. For the first time in maybe a decade, I let myself go blank. I thought about the version of me that came to this city at 24. Hopeful, hungry, desperate to make her mark in marketing, willing to pour herself into spreadsheets and pitch decks if it meant climbing. And I had climbed. Until I became invisible. When I got back to our apartment that night, Caleb was waiting, pacing like a child who'd broken a vase. "Emily," he started, stepping forward. "I can explain." I held up my hand. "You don't have to." He blinked. "You don't?" "No. Because I already know. You lied. You used me. And you did it with someone I mentored." His mouth opened, searching for a lie that would stick. "It wasn't like that." "But it was," I said quietly. "And you know what? I let it happen. Just like I let that company drain me." I walked past him, picked up my overnight bag, and filled it with essentials. No dramatics, no shouting, just quiet, terrifying clarity. "Where are you going?" he asked, like he had a right to know. I turned to him, hand on the doorknob. "To remember who I was before I made myself small for men like you." I stayed in a cheap hotel in Midtown for 3 nights. The walls were thin, the breakfast stale, but it was mine. No one expected me to be anything in that room. I didn't have to smile. Didn't have to say, "I'm fine." I just was. It's funny how silence makes memories louder. Things I hadn't thought about in years started rushing back, uninvited, unfiltered. The first time Caleb lied to me, it was something small. We had only been dating 6 months. I found a receipt from a bar across town. He said he had been working late. I wasn't even looking for it. It fell out of his coat pocket when I was hanging it up. When I asked about it, he didn't hesitate. Oh, it was drinks with the guys from the agency. I didn't mention it because I figured you'd be too tired from work. He kissed my forehead, and I felt unreasonable. Like I was nagging. Like I was the problem. I remember deleting the photo of the receipt I'd taken on my phone, telling myself to trust him, to not be that kind of woman. I was not that kind of woman for years. Not the one who snooped through texts. Not the one who questioned his vague weekend plans. Not the one who fought over flirty colleagues or midnight texts from old friends. I made myself reasonable, rational, palatable. Meanwhile, he made himself invisible in plain sight. The first time I caught Amanda borrowing one of my ideas was during a team brainstorm. We were pitching a campaign for a wellness app trying to target millennial moms. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m., building a positioning deck. I sent it to her and another junior on the team mentoring, I told myself. That morning, in front of the whole team, Amanda presented my exact tagline, "Wellness that works the way you do." My words, my tone, my entire pitch structure. My manager, Todd, nodded enthusiastically. "That's strong, Amanda. Let's build around that." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit as long as the campaign succeeded, as long as we won. But deep down, something curled inside me, something that whispered, "This isn't how it's supposed to be." It happened again, and again. Amanda would ask to run something by me, get my feedback, and then magically produce something almost identical in meetings with the higher-ups. And me? I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't worth burning bridges, that she was young, that maybe she just didn't know better. But she knew. Oh, she knew. Caleb and Amanda were like mirror images of each other. Charming, calculated, opportunistic. They knew how to get people to hand over power willingly. And I was the perfect host. There was this one night I'll never forget. Caleb and I had been invited to a friend's wedding in Connecticut. It was one of those overpriced outdoor barn weddings with string lights and miniature cupcakes. Halfway through the reception, I noticed Caleb had been gone a while. When he came back, his shirt was rumpled, his jaw clenched. I asked where he'd gone. He smiled, tight-lipped. Just needed air. Later, someone posted photos on Instagram, group shots, laughing candids, and there, barely visible in the background, was Caleb, leaning far too close to a woman in a red dress I didn't recognize. Her hand on his arm, his mouth next to her ear. When I showed him, he laughed. "Babe, seriously? You think I'm cheating based on a blurry photo? That's insane." And just like that, I became the irrational one again. It's always like that with people like him. They don't hit, they don't scream, they don't throw things. They just slowly convince you that your instincts are broken, that your gut is overreacting, that your discomfort is your own flaw. And by the time you realize it, you're so entangled in the mess that leaving feels like setting fire to your own life. At work, it was the same erosion. Small cuts, tiny humiliations. Like the time Todd introduced me to a client as one of our strongest support staff. I had been leading the account for 9 months. Or the time I was asked to soften my tone in emails because a male colleague said I came across as abrasive. Or when I was given extra assignments because you're so good at detail work while others were off pitching in the Hamptons. They didn't come for me with knives, they came with expectations, with silence, with absence. And I made excuses. They're under pressure. I'm still learning. It'll be my turn soon. It never was. Back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop. Just to check. I looked at my old Google Drive years of ideas, strategy decks, frameworks, all of them shared, many of them untouched by my name in the final product. I opened our shared Dropbox folder at work. Amanda had downloaded 3 major campaign documents last week, late at night. My eyes didn't burn with tears. Not anymore. They burned with clarity. I called my mom that night. I hadn't talked to her in weeks, maybe months. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello, just, "I think I broke my life." She didn't ask questions, she just said, "Tell me everything." So I did. For 2 hours, I spilled it all, the lies, the work, the betrayal, the exhaustion. I told her how I didn't know who I was anymore. And she said something I'll never forget. "Maybe it's not that you broke your life, Emily. Maybe it's that it was never really yours. Maybe it's time you build one that actually belongs to you." The next morning, I didn't cry. I showered, got dressed, ate toast that tasted like cardboard, and went back to my apartment. Caleb was gone, so was most of his stuff. Good. I opened my email, dozens of unread messages. I opened each one slowly. From Todd, "Can we chat when you're in?" From Amanda, "Hey, I know things have been tense, but I'd love to clear the air." From HR, "Just a reminder that your PTO doesn't cover the full week unless formally approved." From myself, silently, "You don't owe them anything anymore." But I wasn't ready to quit. Not yet. There was something I needed to do first. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. But for me? To see what happened when I stopped being useful to everyone else and finally became loyal to myself. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't happen in bedrooms or restaurants. It happens in boardrooms, in Slack threads, in passive-aggressive subject lines. It's the heartbreak of realizing your loyalty was never mutual, that you gave everything to a place that never planned to give back. I used to believe I was lucky to work at Branmore. It had glass walls, cold brew on tap, and a rooftop happy hour every other Friday. People wore sneakers with their blazers and said things like ideation funnel, without irony. It looked like success. It looked like the dream. But under the neon signs and curated playlists was a system that fed on quiet compliance, and I was its perfect fuel. I started at Branmore 5 years ago as a strategy associate. I remember walking in the first day with a notebook, so pristine it felt like a promise. I stayed late every night. I volunteered for every messy project no one wanted. I made people look good. Especially Todd. Todd was the kind of boss who made you feel chosen. He'd pull you aside after meetings and say things like, "You're sharp, Emily. Real sharp. Just play your cards right." I thought that meant something, that he saw me. What he really meant was, be useful, be quiet. There was this one time early on when I'd prepped a whole campaign proposal for a skincare client. I worked the entire weekend on it. Designed the framework, built the deck, ran competitive analysis. The morning of the pitch, Todd pulled me aside. "We're letting Jake lead the presentation, it'll land better coming from him. But don't worry, I told him to give you a shout out." Jake stood in front of the boardroom and presented my work word for word. He never mentioned me once. I clapped along with the others. That night, I got a Slack message from Todd. "Great work behind the scenes. This is how we build trust." Trust. As if silence was currency. The thing is, I used to admire Amanda. She reminded me of myself, eager, hungry, unpolished. She asked a lot of questions, shadowed me in meetings, asked for feedback. At first, I welcomed her in. I believed in mentorship. I believed women should support women. But over time, something shifted. She started booking meetings I wasn't invited to, rewriting decks I'd already finished, pitching clients directly when it wasn't her role. Still, I made excuses. She's just ambitious. She's still learning. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Then came the agency reorg. The email was simple, a new collaboration structure. Amanda would now co-lead the lifestyle vertical with me. Except it wasn't co-lead. It was led. With me doing the grunt work. And no one said a thing. Not Todd, not the other partners, not even the women I thought were allies. Because Amanda was shiny, youthful, buzzworthy. I was efficient, reliable, background. I remember a moment during a client dinner, big brand exec from a vegan startup was raving about Amanda's innovative mind. She smiled, thanked him, and clinked her wine glass. I sat there, invisible, nursing the Pinot I didn't want, staring at the candle wax pooling in the glass dish. I had written that entire campaign she was being praised for. I told myself I was just being egotistical, that good leaders empower others, that this was what teamwork looked like. No, this was what erasure looked like. There was a secret in that office zone we never said out loud, but everyone operated under. If you're a woman, and you're not charming or threatening, you better be silent. Too charming and you're manipulative. Too assertive and you're aggressive. Too silent and you're invisible. I tried all three, none of them saved me. I started noticing other patterns. Women leaving quietly after giving birth. Men being mentored into VP roles after 6 months. HR sending flowers instead of fixing toxic dynamics. One woman, a creative director named Hannah, had tried to push back. I remember she filed a formal complaint about a senior executive making inappropriate comments. She was gone 2 weeks later. Brushed off as a culture mismatch. The day after Amanda's promotion, I sat in my cube, staring at her new email signature, Executive Director, Lifestyle Strategy. I had held that title in everything but name. I looked around the office, the branded notebooks, the inspirational, quote, decals on the wall, the carefully curated snack brand. I felt something break. Not anger, not grief. Awakening. I opened a document on my desktop and titled it Project Exit. It wasn't rage. It was precision. That same day, I said yes to a freelance opportunity I'd been dodging for months, helping a startup craft their brand story. I met with the founder after hours in a coffee shop down in Soho. She was smart, tired, and blunt. We just want someone who gets it, she said, who can build something from scratch and not waste time. I smiled for the first time in days. That's what I do best. She paid me more for 2 weeks of work than Branmore had paid me for a month of overtime. On the train home, I stared at my reflection in the window. I didn't look powerful. I looked hollow. But under the surface, something small and stubborn had started to grow. A seed. A shift. A quiet promise to myself. This ends. With me. Some people stab you and then ask why you're bleeding. That was Amanda. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't storm into rooms demanding power. She smiled. That bright, polished, millennial perfect smile. The kind you'd find on an Instagram ad for vitamin gummies. Friendly. Disarming. Deceptive. I used to think she was ambitious. Now I know she was strategic, surgically so. The Monday after her promotion, Amanda swung by my desk with 2 oat milk lattes in hand. I got your usual, she chirped, placing one beside my keyboard like a peace offering. You've been so slammed lately. I figured a little caffeine boost wouldn't hurt. I looked at the cup, then at her. She wore the same blouse I'd seen her in at least 3 times, effortless. I just threw this on, chic. Her hair was pulled into a low bun, casual yet calculated. My hand hovered over the coffee, but I didn't pick it up. Thanks, I said flatly. She blinked. You okay? That was the thing about Amanda, she always pretended to care. It was her weapon of choice. We had once been close, or so I thought. During her first few months, I'd invited her into nearly every meeting I was allowed to. I reviewed her pitch decks, edited her copy line by line, coached her on how to handle Todd's feedback without flinching. She used to thank me constantly, little Slack hearts, voice notes saying I wouldn't survive here without you, emails signed your biggest fan. Now, here she was, sipping a latte while sitting in my chair, in meetings I had built, with clients I had brought in. What hurt wasn't that she was good. It was that she was deliberate. I started seeing the patterns I'd ignored before. The night she, accidentally, cleed Todd on an email thread where I'd vented lightly about unrealistic timelines. The way she would ask me leading questions in meetings just to contradict me with a fresh perspective. The calendar invites she started sending directly to senior execs, leaving me out, while saying, I didn't want to waste your time. Death by 1,000 smiles. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the coffee, Amanda pulled me into a glass meeting room. I wanted to check in, she said, crossing her legs delicately. I know the transition's been a lot. I just want to make sure we're aligned. I looked at her, not through her, at her. She tilted her head. You've seemed distant? I just want to make sure there's no hard feelings. No hard feelings? I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned back in the chair and asked, Amanda, do you ever think about how you got here? She blinked. Sorry? How you went from junior strategist to executive director in under a year, how every project you led had someone else's fingerprints under the polish. Her mouth parted, just slightly. I'm not accusing, I said, cool and steady. I'm just wondering if you ever think about how things add up. Who builds the ladder you climb? There was a flicker behind her eyes. Something calculating. Then she smiled. Again. Soft. Almost sad. I guess we all have to do what we can to stand out, she said. This place doesn't reward silence. No, it doesn't. It rewards performance. And Amanda had learned early that the best performance was pretending she wasn't performing at all. That night I went home and started digging. I opened up every shared folder I could find, every old Slack thread, every doc history. I cataloged instances word for word where Amanda had repackaged my ideas. I made a spreadsheet. I highlighted timelines. I pulled time-stamped versions of decks, comparing her final versions to my originals. I wasn't doing it to expose her, not yet. I just needed proof. Not for HR. For myself. Because gaslighting works best when there's no evidence, and I wasn't going to let myself question my own memory anymore. The next day, Amanda posted on LinkedIn. Excited to step into this next chapter leading Brandmore's lifestyle division, huge thanks to those who mentored me along the way. She didn't tag me. She tagged Todd. That week, our largest lifestyle client, Loon Ivy, was set to renew their contract. I had built that relationship from scratch, managed every deliverable, poured myself into that brand like it was my own. Amanda was leading the pitch to re-sign. I wasn't invited. So I showed up anyway. I didn't barge into the meeting. I didn't announce myself. I waited in the back of the room, standing, silent. The client Stephanie spotted me and waved me over, surprised. I didn't know you were involved in this phase, she said brightly. Amanda paused, just slightly. Oh, Emily's been a great support behind the scenes, but I've been leading the strategy. Support. Again with that word. Stephanie looked between us, something unreadable on her face. The pitch went fine, not great. Amanda's charm was there, but the insights were hollow, the ideas regurgitated. Afterward, Stephanie pulled me aside. You ever think about starting your own thing? She asked casually. I blinked. What? She smiled. You've got vision. People like Amanda? They're good at riding waves. But people like you build them. That night, I didn't cry. I opened a new document, titled it Agency Blueprint. There's a certain stillness right before the collapse. Not silence. Stillness. Like the air knows what's coming and holds its breath. That's how it felt the morning I walked into the office and found out my access to the Loon Ivy project folder had been revoked. No warning, no conversation, just a red permission denied banner across the screen. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds before checking the internal comms. Nothing. Then I pinged Amanda. Hey, looks like I don't have access to LI anymore. Tech glitch? She replied in under a minute. Hey, not a glitch. Todd thought it'd be easier for everyone if we streamline comms. Less overlap. Appreciate you understanding. That emoji at the end? It nearly sent me into orbit. I stood up and walked straight to Todd's office. He didn't even look surprised. Emily, come in. Close the door. I did. He motioned for me to sit. I didn't. I've been with this client for over 2 years, I said evenly. I managed their entire rebrand, built that relationship from nothing. Todd sighed. The patronizing kind. Emily, no one's questioning your contributions, but the direction of the agency is shifting. Amanda's approach has been really well received by newer leadership. We want to lean into that. By erasing mine? He held up his hands like he was offering peace. You've been phenomenal, but sometimes to move forward, we have to let go of legacy dynamics. Legacy dynamics. As if I was a relic. I stared at him, cold and unblinking. You're making a mistake. He smiled, almost pityingly. That's above my pay grade now. When I left his office, I didn't go back to my desk. I walked into the hallway, down the elevator, past reception. And I just kept walking. I ended up at Bryant Park, sitting on a green metal chair beneath a tree, the city churning around me. It wasn't just work. It was Caleb, too. Because while my career was unraveling, so was the last shred of hope I had in him. That morning, before the office ambush, I'd gotten a message from someone I barely knew, Olivia, a designer who had worked at Brandmore the year before. She'd moved to LA, started freelancing. We'd only spoken twice. Her message was simple. Not sure if this is my place, but I saw Caleb in a photo from Amanda's rooftop party last week. Thought you two were still together? She attached a story screenshot. I opened it. There they were. Amanda in a sundress, laughing with a glass of wine. Caleb behind her, his hand casually resting on her waist, not hiding, not ashamed, just there. Like they were already a thing. Already comfortable. Already built from the rubble of me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just laughed. A sharp, ugly sound that startled the woman sitting next to me in the park. I texted Olivia back, thanks. You were right to send it. Then I turned off my phone. I stayed in the park for hours. Watching strangers read books, sip iced coffees, talk on speakerphone too loudly. And somewhere between 3 p.m. and sunset, I stopped feeling like I had to fix any of it. I didn't need to get Caleb back. I didn't need to get my old job back. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Later that night, I went back to the apartment, the one Caleb and I had signed the lease on together. It felt foreign now, like someone else's life staged for a magazine. I pulled out 2 suitcases and started packing. Not just my essentials, everything that mattered. The framed photo of my mom and me from graduation, the fountain pen my dad gave me before he passed, the scarf I bought in Italy when I went on that solo trip years ago, the one that reminded me I could breathe on my own. Halfway through packing, I heard keys at the door. Caleb. He walked in holding groceries like nothing had happened. Hey, he said, confused, what's going on? I stood up slowly. Don't. He blinked. Don't what? Don't act like this is normal, like I'm just reorganizing the pantry. He set the bag down. Emily, let's talk. I know things have been messy, but... I held up a photo. The one Olivia had sent. His eyes shifted. That doesn't mean anything. Really? I asked. Then why has Amanda been deleting all your tagged posts for weeks? Why did you change your lock screen? He hesitated. I didn't want to hurt you. No, you just didn't want to look like the bad guy. Silence. Then, so what now? You're just gonna leave? I zipped the suitcase shut. Yes. He stepped toward me. Emily, this is ridiculous. You're emotional. You're making everything dramatic. There it was. The gaslight. The default. You don't get to call me dramatic, I said calmly. You get to call movers and a lawyer, because I'm done pretending this is salvageable. His jaw tightened. You'll regret this. I picked up my bag. No, I'll regret staying longer than I should have. That night, I checked into a temporary rental in Brooklyn, tiny, overpriced, and perfect. The next morning, I opened my laptop and added one more slide to my agency blueprint deck. Phase 1. Clients who've already asked where I'm going next. I wasn't running. I was building. And they had no idea what was coming. It didn't happen all at once. There was no lightning bolt, no speech in the mirror, no soundtrack swelling in the background. The shift came quietly, like a bruise that darkens overnight. You don't see the damage until the light hits just right, and then, suddenly, you can't unsee it. That was me, 2 weeks after I left Caleb and started working from my tiny Brooklyn rental, surrounded by cardboard boxes, half-drunk coffee, and the first real stillness I'd had in years. That morning, I opened my laptop and wrote 3 words on a blank document. I am done. Done making myself smaller to protect other people's egos. Done building empires I don't get to own. Done begging for a seat at a table I helped assemble. It started with a call. Stephanie, the lifestyle client I'd nurtured at Brandmore, reached out casually. Hey, just checking in, you good? I paused, then said the truth for once. No, but I'm getting there. She didn't push, just replied, well, when you're ready, let's grab lunch. There's something I want to run by you. We met a week later at a tiny bistro in Soho. She didn't waste time. I want to break my contract with Brandmore, she said, stirring her espresso. I'm not impressed with the new leadership. I blinked. You're 2 months into a 1-year renewal. She smiled. Contracts can be rewritten. Then she leaned forward. I want you, not them. That night, I stared at my bedroom ceiling until 2 a.m. Fear fought with possibility in my chest. Leave quietly, stay safe. Or build. I thought about all the women I'd watched get pushed out of rooms they deserved to be in. I thought about Amanda, not just her betrayal, but her belief that she had to become a smiling saboteur to succeed. Maybe she wasn't the symptom. Maybe the system was the disease. And maybe I didn't have to play sick anymore. The next day, I registered an LLC. It wasn't much. A name, a business email, a domain that barely fit on a standard card. Shift Strategy Group. Tagline, you're not hard to market, they're just not listening. I started small. Referrals from past contacts. Old colleagues from my first agency gig, freelancers I'd met years ago who were now running indie brands. And each time someone said, you left Brandmore? I just smiled and said, I upgraded. Meanwhile, back at Brandmore, things were unraveling. Amanda's ideas were slick but shallow, the kind that looked good in a pitch but fell apart in execution. Todd was scrambling. 2 other mid-level women had resigned. One had sent a scathing Glassdoor review that was getting passed around the industry like wildfire. Someone forwarded it to me. The title? Built Their Brand. Lost my voice. I knew exactly who wrote it. And I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I started documenting everything. Not for revenge, not yet. Just in case. Emails where Todd had dismissed concerns about overlap on projects. Deck revisions that clearly showed my ideas stripped of credit. Slack threads where Amanda had subtly excluded me. Evidence. Receipts. Patterns. Because if I ever needed to really speak, I wanted my words backed by truth. But the biggest change wasn't what I was doing. It was how I felt. I wasn't waking up in dread anymore. I wasn't shrinking to fit anyone else's comfort. I wasn't waiting for someone to save me, or choose me, or finally see me. I was seeing myself. And I liked what I saw. One night, as I was reviewing a branding deck for a new client, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. I listened. It was Amanda. Hey, I don't know if you'll even listen to this, but I think I messed up. Not just with the promotion with you. And I don't know how to fix it, but I thought I should say something. Todd's. He's falling apart. I'm not sure this place is what I thought it was. Anyway, you don't have to respond. Just, I'm sorry. I didn't delete the message. But I didn't respond either. Because I wasn't looking for apologies. I was building something too big for them to grasp and too solid for them to tear down. There's something liberating about being underestimated. They stop watching you. They stop guarding the doors you plan to walk through. And in the silence of their dismissal, you plant seeds the kind that bloom when they least expect it. That's what I did. Right under their noses. After Amanda's voicemail, I knew two things. She was in over her head. Todd was losing control of the narrative. Branmore was a house of cards, and the wind had started. But I didn't want to watch it fall. I wanted to be gone before the collapse so far ahead they wouldn't even see my shadow. I started by changing how I showed up. No more staying late. No more volunteering to clean up Amanda's decks. No more hand-holding, mentoring, covering, smoothing over. I became quiet, efficient, disengaged. And they barely noticed. Which told me everything I needed to know. Meanwhile, Shift Strategy Group was growing. Stephanie officially pulled out of her Branmore contract and signed with me for a 6-month rebrand. 2 other small clients followed. I brought on a freelance designer, someone I trusted from way back, and looped in a content strategist I'd met at a workshop 3 years ago. All women. All brilliant. All undervalued. All ready to build something different. Each night, after logging off Branmore's servers, I'd open my second laptop. My real work. Contracts, strategy plans, naming sessions, brand voice development. But the best part wasn't the revenue. It wasn't even the freedom. It was that, for the first time, I was building something with my name on it. My fingerprints, my integrity, my vision. I started copying everything from my time at Branmore portfolios, decks, testimonials, project timelines, anything that proved I had done the work, anything they might try to erase or claim later. Not to fight them, but to protect myself? You never realize how many doors you've opened until you're walking away and they start trying to lock them behind you. One evening, as I sat reviewing client deliverables, I got an email from HR. Subject: Internal Opportunity Discussion. I opened it. Todd had nominated me to explore lateral growth through a program for emerging leaders interested in operational support. Operational support. Not strategy. Not leadership. Support. It was a demotion disguised as development. I laughed. Out loud. Then I marked it unread and shut my laptop. Later that week, I went into the office for a client review meeting, one I technically wasn't even required to attend anymore. Amanda was there, frazzled but still trying to look effortless. "Hey," she said softly as I walked in. "Hey," I replied. Nothing more. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but I breezed past her and took a seat by the window. The meeting was fine. Amanda's pitch was overly polished, light on substance. Todd tried to cover for her with buzzwords. The client nodded along but looked unconvinced. Afterward, one of the junior associates, a woman named Bree, pulled me aside in the hallway. "You built that campaign, didn't you?" I blinked. What? I've been going through old decks. Your name is all over the foundational work. Amanda just rebranded it. I didn't respond. She leaned in and whispered, "If you ever go solo, I want in." That night, I updated my resignation letter. Not to send it. Not yet. But to remind myself that I could. Anytime. In the weeks that followed, I watched Brandmore's internal slack grow quieter. More people were leaving. Clients were getting restless. Amanda messaged me once. "Any chance we can grab coffee sometime? I'd love to clear the air." I left it on read. I didn't need closure from her. I was already gone in every way that mattered. One Friday afternoon, I stayed late for the last time. Not to work. To clean. I cleared out my desk, boxed up the few personal items I hadn't already taken home, deleted my custom templates from the shared drive, logged out of every system, deleted my passwords, and just before shutting down my computer, I printed one copy of a deck I'd built, the one Amanda used in her pitch just 2 weeks ago. I slid it into a folder and wrote my name across the front in bold black ink. Created by Tran, March 2022. Then I left it on Todd's desk. No note. No explanation. Just proof. As I walked out of the building for what I knew would be the last time, the air felt lighter. Not because I was escaping, but because I was finally stepping into something that felt like mine. Not stolen. Not begged for. Not tolerated. Mine. Some people dream of a dramatic exit. Slamming doors, shouting truths, a scene that leaves everyone stunned. But me? I didn't want noise. I wanted silence. The kind that echoes after power leaves the room. I chose a Thursday. Not the end of the week, not a big client day, just ordinary enough to be forgettable, which meant my absence would hit differently the next Monday. The night before, I barely slept, but it wasn't anxiety. It was peace. That morning, I wore my favorite blazer. Navy blue, clean lines, no frills. I pulled my hair back, swiped on a muted red lip, and walked into Brandmore like I had every other day, calm, composed, invisible to most. But inside, I felt electric. At 10:00 a.m., I sent the email. Subject: Resignation, Tran. Dear Todd, after careful thought, I've decided to resign from my position at Brandmore, effective 2 weeks from today. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities I've had here and the experience I've gained, but it's time for me to pursue the next chapter of my career. I'll ensure a smooth transition and am happy to assist in wrapping up current projects during my notice period. Best? Emily. I clicked send, then I exhaled. A full breath, the kind I hadn't taken in 5 years. 15 minutes later, Todd called me into his office. He tried to play neutral. "Well, wasn't expecting this," he said, hands clasped on the desk. "Any particular reason?" I smiled. "Just time." He looked uncomfortable. "We were actually thinking about looping you into a new initiative, strategyre.org. Too late." He cleared his throat. "What'll you be doing next?" I held his gaze. Something of my own. He nodded slowly. "I see. Well, we'll miss your work. You've always been reliable." Reliable. Not brilliant. Not essential. Just convenient. I stood. "Thanks for the opportunity." And just like that, I walked out. Word traveled fast. Amanda came to my desk around noon. She looked tired, thinner, more brittle. "Hey," she said, clutching a coffee she hadn't touched. "I just heard." I nodded. "Yup." She fidgeted. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." I looked at her. She was waiting for something: forgiveness, understanding, permission. I gave her none. Instead, I said, "Take care, Amanda." Then I turned back to my screen. I spent the next 2 weeks finishing what needed finishing, No gossip, no long lunches, no grand gestures, just clean files, transferred logins, scheduled calls. On my last day, no one threw a party, no card was passed around, no speech was given. It was perfect. I left the building at 7 p.m. sharp, took the elevator down like any other day, walked past reception, stepped out onto the sidewalk. But this time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a woman walking toward her future with both hands free. That night, I had dinner with my team. Not Brandmore. My team. We met at a cozy rooftop downtown, string lights, homemade cocktails, mismatched chairs. There were only 4 of us, but the table felt full. We laughed. We made plans. We toasted with cheap Prosecco and talked like we had nothing to prove anymore. And when they asked me how it felt finally being out, I just said, "It feels like I finally stopped trying to be chosen and chose myself instead." At 2 a.m., I got an email from Stephanie, the lifestyle client. Subject: Big win. She wrote, "Campaign's live, already getting traction. Their CEO asked who was behind the positioning. I told him, a woman who knew what she was worth and walked away from people who didn't. Just thought you should know." I stared at the screen, smiling so wide it hurt. Then I replied, "Let's build more of that." I didn't need revenge. Not in the way people expect it, no sabotage, no viral expose, no public meltdown. What I wanted was something quieter, smarter, lasting. Success that made their betrayal irrelevant. And that's exactly what I built. 3 weeks after I walked out of Brandmore, Shift Strategy Group officially launched. We didn't have an office. We had Zoom calls, Google Docs, and a shared calendar that lit up with possibility. Our first campaign with Loon, Ivy, dropped mid-month, a soft launch. No fanfare, but it caught fire. Within 72 hours, the campaign hashtag trended regionally. By the end of the week, their app downloads spiked 34%. Stephanie forwarded me an internal memo from their CEO. "Smart, fresh, and intuitive. This is the voice we've been chasing for 2 years. Keep whoever did this and pay them well." She added a comment, "Told you." Then came the next surprise. A luxury candle brand I'd once pitched at Brandmore but had been told I was too corporate for emailed me directly. "Hey Emily, we heard you were behind the Loon Ivy rebrand. Would love to talk." 2 days later, we signed them. Then a skincare brand, then a startup in women's financial literacy. Every single one of them came through someone I'd once quietly supported, helped, advised, encouraged. Women don't forget that kind of support, not really. They just wait for the moment to return it. Meanwhile, Brandmore cracked. I didn't watch obsessively. I didn't need to. People sent me things, screenshots, whispers, industry gossip. The cracks showed first in their social presence. Copy that fell flat, engagement dropping, campaigns that looked polished but landed nowhere. Then came a staff reshuffle. Amanda was moved laterally to a less visible division. Todd was on sabbatical. One email leaked from an anonymous source showed a client threatening to pull their retainer unless someone like Emily Tran returned to the strategy table. That part made me laugh out loud. Then came the phone call. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. "Emily? Speaking. This is Martin Langley, partner at Stride Ventures. I believe we met briefly at a panel last year." My heart didn't skip. It focused. "I'm calling because we're considering an investment in a few boutique agencies, and Shift Strategy came up repeatedly." I smiled, slow and sharp. "Happy to talk," I said. "But I'm not looking to be absorbed. I'm building something with its own spine." He chuckled. "That's what we're looking for." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same industry that once asked me to smile more and take the feedback gracefully now wanted my insight, my leadership, my voice untouched, unfiltered, unapologetic. I posted something small on LinkedIn that week. No shade, no names. Just. The room you were excluded from was never the only room. Build your own and leave the door open for others. It got shared 0 times. Amanda liked it. Todd didn't. That weekend, I met Bree, the associate from Brandmore, for coffee. She'd resigned the week before, no announcement, just vanished from the Slack. When I asked how she felt, she said, "Free, terrified, alive." I knew exactly what she meant. I offered her a contract gig on the spot. "You're not ready to commit to anything yet," I told her, "but I see your work. When you are ready, let's build together." She cried. I didn't. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I finally felt full enough to hold space for someone else. The best part of winning quietly? You don't need anyone to clap. The results do it for you. It's been 1 year. 1 year since the email, the suitcase, the quiet goodbye. 12 months since I left behind a man who saw me as convenient, a workplace that saw me as disposable, a version of myself who saw her worth only through other people's eyes. And now? I wake up every morning not wondering who I have to be for the world. I wake up as me! And that is enough. Shift Strategy Group is no longer just an idea. We have an office now, nothing fancy but warm, light wood, open windows, shelves with actual plants we remember to water. There are 9 of us. Mostly women, some queer, all brilliant. We don't do PowerPoints with fluff. We don't pitch by pretending. We don't play the game to survive it. We rewrite it. One brand, one voice, one woman at a time. Sometimes, when I walk through our space, I catch myself standing still, watching a young strategist pitch with fire in her chest, watching a designer call out a client's shallow brief, firmly, respectfully, watching someone be unapologetic in a room that used to demand she shrink. And I feel this ache not of pain, but of recognition. I remember being her. I remember hiding my ideas behind someone else's smile. I remember thinking strength had to be quiet, invisible. Now I know better. Strength can be soft, but it is never small. I don't think about Caleb anymore. Not with anger, not even with sadness. He called once months ago, left a voicemail I never returned. I listened once. He said he was trying to find himself, that he was sorry for how things went. I deleted it. Not because I hated him. Because I no longer needed his apology to be free. Amanda left Brandmore too. She started a consultancy on the side. I hear she's doing okay, less performative these days, maybe more honest. Someone forwarded me an article she wrote for a marketing journal. The byline was about building culture without burning bridges. I didn't laugh. People change. Or they don't. It doesn't matter anymore. She's not the villain in my story. She was a symptom. I've healed from the disease. One afternoon I spoke at a conference, a Women in Business event in Chicago. My panel was about quiet power. Afterward, a woman approached me. Maybe mid-30s. Nervous smile. Clutching a notebook like it was a shield. She said, "I was you, last year. Before the breakdown, before the clarity. Listening to you felt like someone handed me a mirror." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Then use it, don't look away again." She cried. I didn't. But later, on the flight home, I did. Because there is no revenge sweeter than helping someone else stand where you once fell. There's a quote I keep on my desk. It's printed on a torn scrap of paper taped beside my monitor. It says, "You were never too much. They were simply not enough to hold you." It reminds me of every moment I was told I was difficult, too direct, too emotional, too ambitious, too loud, too quiet, too something. And now? Now I know I was never too anything. I was right on time. If you're listening to this right now, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, erased, I hope you know this. You are not crazy. You are not too much. You are not imagining it. Your brilliance threatens the broken systems you've been asked to hold together. Your discomfort is the truth trying to rise. And your voice, however shaky, however tired, still matters. Even if you whisper, even if you walk away, even if all you do is survive long enough to start again, that is strength. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve to win. This isn't just my story anymore. It's ours. So, when they tell you to stay quiet, speak. And if your voice shakes, let it. Let it ring. Let it rise. Let it burn every lie they ever told you about who you had to be, until all that's left is you, whole, wild, unapologetically enough,